Whistleblowers, a vital role in the business world and corporate governance. While some may consider them as unsung heroes, those who blow the whistle always face uncertain consequences of their actions. What is it like to actually be a whistleblower? What are the concerns that should be taken into account before the whistle is blown? Should governments or organisations encourage or even reward those who reveal secrets? In this final episode of the Corporate Governance series, Senior Lecturer of Hong Kong Metropolitan University's Lee Shau School of Business and Administration, Pooja SHUKLA, will discuss the topic Life Before and After Whistleblowing. She will explain the concept of whistleblowing and the laws relating to it, and will also analyse the points of view from different stakeholders and various controversial issues of whistleblowing.
Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well. We have got you another very interesting topic this time. The topic is life before and after whistleblowing. Before we begin, I want to give you a scenario. Let us say you are working for a big listed company. It is your dream job. You report to two managers, Peter and Jimmy. Peter is a very bossy person. Nobody likes him, but you have to work with him. And all of you work in the same department. One day, you found out that Peter had been transferring company's money to his own account. The moment you found out, you bring it to the attention of the senior management. You think this is all about being moral. This is the right thing to do. This is how you were raised. Your teachers, your parents, that's what they taught you. So, at the end of the day, you feel good about yourself. Let us say, since life is interesting, the very next day, you find out that your other manager, Jimmy, is also doing the same thing. You love Jimmy. He is a great person. You have a great friendship with Jimmy and the whole of his family. You go out for lunch every day. Now, will you report Jimmy the same way you reported Peter? In this case, do you think truth is exactly of same importance as it was in the earlier case? Or do you think your being loyal to Jimmy is more important than truth in this case? This is the classic dilemma that whistleblowers face, whether they should side with truth or loyalty. Now let us begin our seminar and discuss how and why whistleblowing matters. Before we even begin, let us see what is the meaning of truth. Maybe the truth that you believe in and the truth that I believe in are different. Maybe my truth is more important than your truth. Do you think if a truth benefits you personally is better than the truth that benefits the whole society? Do you think truth is a comparative subject? Does truth matter? Okay. How much? Would you risk all you have for the sake of it? Do you think it is the moral values or money that you side with? All of these are very deep philosophical questions. So I would give you a moment to reflect. What is the value of truth in your life? And do you think the meaning of truth changes as you grow? Or do you think with every new experience that you have about the reality of life, it changes or tarnishes the image that you have in your mind about the truth? Our religions have been talking about the truth. For example, in Hinduism, in Manduk Upanishad, The word is Satyamev Jayate, which means truth alone triumphs. It is also a part of the national emblem of India. In Christianity also, it says, truth shall make you free. So this is how our society has been conditioning us to believe that truth is the ultimate truth, and truth is the most important thing in your life. I am sure you are aware of these two people, Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. To you, they may be heroes, or they may be traitors. That depends on which side of truth you are at. I'm sure you know Edward Snowden flew from Hawaii to Hong Kong. He was working as a National Security Agency official in the US. He found out a lot of US secrets, and he brought it to the attention of the general public. And of course, the US government took action against him. I'm sure you know Julian Assange. He is the founder of WikiLeaks. He disclosed a lot of documents pertaining to the wars that US has been involved in, from Afghanistan to Iraq. There is a big list of the things or the documents that he made public. If you were in the place of these two people, would you have done exactly the same thing? Or do you think you would have done things differently? There are a lot of people who are discussing where Edward Snowden is now, where Julian Assange is now. But the question is, did they really think where they would end up being before they blew the whistle? Now let us discuss the origin of this term, whistleblower. Earlier, it was always the use of a whistle to alert the public about a situation like breaking of the rules. You would also have seen sports referees blowing a whistle to indicate a foul play. This term was coined in the 1970s by a US civic activist, Ralph Nader, and since then, the term whistleblowing has been in use. This seminar comes with a lot of movie recommendations. All these people that you see on your screen, a lot of movies have been made on their lives. You may consider watching a lot of documentaries that people have made. Daniel was an employee who leaked secrets about the Vietnam War. And even to this date, some people believe that US actually lost the war or the US won the war. I leave it up to you, up to your interpretation. Frank Serpico was a New York City police officer who attempted to confront the rampant corruption within the police department. I'm sure most of you would have seen the movie. Sharon Watkins was an Enron employee who exposed the financial frauds, and she was named the Time magazine's Person of the Year in 2002 for bringing into light the whole of the fiasco. Colleen Rowley was an FBI agent who claimed that the US government already had the information of 9/11 attacks. When we see all these things, we question the government agencies that we have. Are they making the perfect use of the information that they have? Or do you think that there should be no confidential information and everything should be open to the public? There is a question about security and secrecy, and I leave it up to you to decide and make your own decision. For the sake of this seminar, we are going to stick mostly to the concept of whistleblowing and the laws relating to it and the corporate angle of whistleblowing. I will not be covering the political or the philosophical part of it. What are the basics of whistleblowing? Information, anything which is an illegal action or violation of companies' policies or laws, or causes a threat to the public interest or any type of corruption. Who whistleblows is called a whistleblower. That person exposes this information which he or she thinks is illegal, unethical, or incorrect within the organization. This information can be disclosed internally within the organization where that person is working, or externally to the media, the government, or the law enforcement authorities. There is a big risk that whistleblowers face. They can face legal action, criminal charges, social stigma attached to it, workplace bullying, or even job losses. Is there any protection? Well, that depends on the country where you are blowing the whistle. This survey by OECD shows what kind of misconduct was reported via internal company mechanisms. And you can see fraud was the #1 reported cause. There have been other issues reported like human rights, cybercrime, tax, money laundering, labor issues, workplace safety, and all. So is whistleblowing a good idea? Let us analyze this critically. Yes, whistleblowing is great because it protects the stakeholders from the organized wrongdoing. Whistleblowing may not be a good thing because some people might consider it to be unethical. And some people think that if you are bringing out the information about your company to outside parties, you are breaching confidentiality, and especially in industries that handle sensitive client information. If you are working as a doctor of a public hospital, you have a big pressure not to disclose the patient's information. But let us see, if you find out some kind of wrongdoing, would you disclose that? Considering you have the responsibility of maintaining that confidentiality and data privacy laws. What are the benefits of whistleblowing? It is an effective risk management tool. If you remember, we discussed the 3 defense models and the way the organizations have designed their systems. Even if there are some inconsistencies that fall through the first or second gap, at least in the third gap, they can be caught. But there are some things which are so sensitive in nature that the system of the organization is not able to detect it. And that is why we need people to inform the senior management about the wrongdoings and to prevent any kind of fraud in future. Early reporting of misconduct or corruption helps a lot. It helps you to settle the issue without going out to the media or in the public and compromising your reputation. It helps you to detect fraud, and it improves the corporate culture and workplace safety. Corporate governance professionals love it because this helps them to improve the corporate governance function. It also works as a signboard of zero tolerance to fraud, abuse, and corruption, and gives a very good image about your company. It also gives an assurance to the stakeholders about the prevention of illegal actions because they are assured that the company has whistleblowing function, whistleblowing policy in place, and such kind of cases within the organization or outside of the organization, whatever is brought to the light of the senior management will be taken care of. Here is a chart showing the countries which have laws protecting whistleblowers. So you can see there are countries with dedicated national laws protecting the whistleblowers, and the countries in light green showing the laws or provisions protecting whistleblowing in the other forms. When you look at this timeline, you see that gradually the protection of whistleblowers in terms of laws has been increasing. Gradually, the governments are becoming more and more aware of the need to have whistleblowers protection laws. Now let us analyze what kind of protection do we have in Hong Kong. As you know, we do not have a dedicated law for protection of whistleblowers in Hong Kong, but we have these laws where we have individual protection under those separate ordinances for whistleblowers. Under Employment Ordinance, there is protection for dismissal and discrimination and victimization. under sex discrimination, disability discrimination, family status discrimination, and race discrimination ordinance. The court even has the power to order the discriminator to re-employ or employ or promote the victimized person or to pay him or her damages. Under drug trafficking ordinance, organized and serious crime ordinance, United Nations anti-terrorism measures ordinance, we also have the protection that a whistleblower will not be in breach of disclosure of information or liable to any losses arising out of such disclosure. Under POBO, we have the name and address of an informer, which has to be kept confidential. ICAC informers are protected under the Witness Protection Ordinance. Under Securities and Futures Ordinance, we have the protection against any civil liability arising out of the contract, tort, or defamation. As you can see, that we do not have a dedicated whistleblowing protection law in Hong Kong. Hence, Hong Kong is not at par with the international standards of whistleblowing protection. Whatever laws that we have, these individual laws that we just discussed, there is a high uncertainty in terms of coverage of persons or the reporting channel and the scope of disclosures that would be protected or what constitutes a retaliatory action. There are no clear procedures for reporting retaliation or remedies for those who suffer retaliation as a result of making a report. Now let us see, wherever we have whistleblowing protection laws, what kind of matter do these laws cover? A few examples include India, US, Japan, Ghana, Philippines, and Malaysia. It provides to protect whistleblowers who reported misconduct. It also ensures the authorities do not take any retaliatory action. You have to submit evidence which should prove that there was a clear violation of law or abuse of authority or mismanagement, or there was a substantial danger to public safety. And all organizations in the country are encouraged to establish a whistleblower policy endorsed by their boards. What are the repercussions of insufficient legal protection? I'm sure you might be aware of this case of Volkswagen emission scandal, which came to light in 2015, where they had been covering up the emissions, and it blew up later on to the extent that they had to provide compensation to their customers. A big brand like Volkswagen, do you really think not a single employee in the company was effective at bringing this wrongdoing to light for close to a decade? Why do you think this happened? Do you really think that such kind of establishment can run without any person working for that establishment having any idea about this kind of wrongdoing? If you were an employee of Volkswagen and you knew what this company had been doing, would you report it? In my opinion, it boils down to what matters to you. Do you value your job or do you value your moral values? And in addition to that, realistically speaking, do you think there are enough whistleblowing laws in your country where you are going to blow the whistle to protect you in case you bring this kind of misconduct open to the public? Should whistleblowers receive financial incentives? Do you think while you speak the truth, while you value moral values against loyalty, should you be rewarded? A lot of financial incentives are used in many countries, including US, India, South Korea, where they reward the whistleblowers. Whereas in many other countries, they refrain from such kind of practice. There's a very interesting case of this person, Bradley. He was a banker who reported an illegal offshore account held in Switzerland by US citizens, which resulted in the recovery of $5 billion collections and $780 million in penalties. The result? The Swiss government changed its tax treaty with the US, and Bradley received a reward of $104 million. If you were in this person's place, would you do that? If the person who you want to report is your family member, is a close friend, but you would receive a great bounty, would you still do it? It remains a philosophical question, and whenever I discuss that in the class, my students always tell me, depends on the situation. Now let us discuss the international scene. So the US Securities and Exchange Commission, also called as SEC, paid over $900 million to whistleblowers since 2011. SEC paid $114 million to one whistleblower in 2020. Sounds like a lottery, yes? China Securities Regulatory Commission also paid rewards for information on corporate wrongdoers. And many other countries like India, Hungary, South Korea, Ghana, and UK are either introducing whistleblowing programs or paying out rewards already. Now let us see how the process works in US. So initially, the whistleblowers submit the tips to the SEC. After that, they conduct an investigation into the tips received. Finally, the cases are filed and penalties ordered if the results are satisfactory in terms of investigation. And then notices of covered actions are posted, whistleblowers file claims, and then analysis of these claims. And finally, the determinations are issued at preliminary basis, and then possible record and reconsideration requests, and additional analysis, and at the end, final orders are issued, and there may be resolution of appeals. There is an investor protection fund made out of this. As of now, we do not have such kind of provision in Hong Kong. Now let us see what are the provisions in Hong Kong as of now. As per Appendix 14, Corporate Governance Code, the recommended best practice is that the audit committee should establish a whistleblowing policy and system for employees and those who deal with the issuer, that is the company. For example, the customers and suppliers, to raise concerns. In our Appendix 27, which is the Environmental, Social, and Governance Reporting Guide, it says that disclosure has to be made of number of concluded cases regarding corrupt practices brought against the company and the employees during that reporting period and their outcomes. It also asks you to disclose the preventive measures or the whistleblowing procedures and how they are implemented and monitored. I also encourage you to go through this consultation paper issued by HKEX on the review of Corporate Governance Code and related listing rules. It covers a lot of other parts of corporate governance, including whistleblowing. And it is recommending to upgrade the recommended best practice to code provisions requiring the establishment of a whistleblowing policy in a company. And I assure you, as a student of corporate governance, these issues are becoming more and more serious thanks to social media and the access to information that we have these days, which probably had not been so in the past, where people are getting more and more aware of their own rights, and they have a continuous access to a lot of data which they did not have in the past. So stricter laws are required to protect the whistleblowers, and also it develops a good corporate practice when a company has a strong whistleblowing policy. The other new development is that from 1st June 2020, companies operating in Hong Kong under US jurisdiction have additional recommendations to incorporate the revisions to the US Department of Justice guidelines document on evaluation of corporate compliance programs into their whistleblowing programs. Now you would say, okay, Pooja, you have convinced me whistleblowing is important, okay? I'm going to copy paste a whistleblowing policy from the internet and use it in my company, and that should serve my purpose. The answer is no. Just making a policy is not going to be of any use. Policies do not work unless there is an effective communication and training provided. Not just because the other companies are doing it. The policy has to be drafted considering the circumstances, the size and nature of your business. It is important that you can take the legal help to draft your whistleblowing policy, and considering the circumstances or the experiences that you have had in the past from within the organization or outside, or the companies which operate in the same line of business. So these policies have to be ingrained inside the whole of the structure of your human resources function. It must become a part of your employee induction packs. So each time an employee comes on board, he receives the copy of the whistleblowing policy, and in the induction itself, you can explain it to the new employees about the procedures that they would be following in case they find out something that they think they should report. This kind of policy, as a new employee, I received it as a copy. Maybe I changed my desk and I lose that copy. So it is important that this kind of whistleblowing policy must be available to your staff throughout, maybe on the staff intranet. You have to maintain this policy of having effective awareness raising and communication. Train your managers on how to handle disclosures and prevent the occurrence of such discriminatory or disciplinary actions. People who work in the legal department, in the governance department, they are well aware of how to follow a policy or a procedure. But in other departments, let's say if you have an accounting department, you have accounting interns, they may not be aware of the right way to report something. They may not even be so sure about how to report what they found out to their manager. And even their managers, because everyone is so busy at their work, especially in Hong Kong, you do not have time for these petty things until they become so big that you realize that you should have settled it in the first place. So I think managers at all levels should be provided training as to how to handle such requests when they receive it from their subordinates. Training must be provided to all the employees on how to make disclosures as per the whistleblowing policies, whether you are receiving such requests or whether you are giving out such requests. What are the challenges in whistleblowing? Mismanagement of investigation process. If my subordinate is filing a complaint against me and he or she reports it to me, of course, I have a great deal of conflict of interest. I do not want my employee to report against me. And since the process that has been formalized in your whistleblowing policy, he must come to me. And there you have created conflict of interest. So it is important to avoid mismanagement of investigation process. The channels of informing and receiving information must be properly finalized, and the mode of communication should also provide alternatives so that in case you do not fit in the first line, you should be able to go through second or third line. Next is abuse of authority. I may be a very dominating person and I will not tolerate anyone going against me. I will not tolerate anyone picking on me. So abuse of authority is a very common thing when we are considering a whistleblowing request, because these kind of things are so private in nature that only the whistleblower knows it. And if you do not follow the whistleblowing policy of the company, you can also face the threat of any kind of company action taken against you. So it is a very gray line where you avoid abuse of authority and maintain confidentiality. Next is victimization. Of course, on paper, I, as your manager, am following the whistleblowing policy, whereas after I find out that you have been talking bad about my work, or you found out something about me, of course, I'm not going to treat you right. I'm not going to invite you for team lunches. I am going to do everything that is possible in my authority to cause maximum damage to you. Of course, I'm not going to give you any promotion. I'm not going to include you in any kind of activities that would add value to your profile. So this kind of soft level of victimization, legally you will be able to prove I have not done anything, but you can see it is quite apparent that you have been victimizing the whistleblower. The last one is the conflict of interest. Let us say, even if I am able to find out that there is something very serious about my company, and I think that maybe my manager will not take any action if I go and report it to him. Maybe I want to take a legal action against you. Maybe I go to the same law firm, let's say a big law firm that our company is using, and I tell them that this is what I have faced, and I want to take legal action. In that case, if the law firm, which has been receiving a big amount of legal fees every year from the same company, would that law firm want to take your case and fight against this establishment? I think the answer is clear. We run businesses here. This is how law firms might think of you, that while this company, this establishment is my client and you want to blow a whistle on them, I may not be able to help you. Why don't you go to another law firm? Okay, so you pick up your documents, you go to another law firm. Guess what? That law firm has never done any business with this company, and there is no conflict of interest. But this law firm is also not very likely to take that case because they see this company as a prospective client, and they do not want to have any bad blood with these two parties. So it is very difficult to even find help because of conflict of interest. Malicious whistleblowers. We need to make sure that the whistleblowing requests that we have received are in order and are real in nature. The first type is fraudsters, employees who fabricate claims of wrongdoing for personal profits. There are entrappers. There are some employees who might induce others to break the law in order to report them. There are conspirators who conspired to benefit. For example, in an insider dealing conspiracy to blow the whistle and to benefit financially. Or there could be gamers who use the reward schemes using false information. Now we are talking about methods and channels of whistleblowing. There are three channels basically: open channel, confidential reporting, and anonymous reporting. Even if you go to any government department, they generally have these three channels open for you. Either you can report as an open request, where the company will receive your request and they are free to disclose that you, with your name, your Hong Kong ID number, has reported this kind of request. The second option is confidential reporting. When you blow the whistle, the organization promises you that they will keep your name, your details confidential. Or you can report as an anonymous person. Even the company or the establishment receiving your request will not know who you are. The most recent trend that I have seen is that the whistleblowing function these days is getting outsourced to a professional firm where whistleblowers can report anonymously. And the information is obtained more on the objective basis and is furnished to the entity as a client privilege information. And it is not clear as of now if a government agency can use this method. But looking at how this function operates, I think, in my opinion, this is going to weed out any kind of conflict of interest or even victimization or the abuse of power of authority, because the collection point of information is outsourced, which of course will act objectively because they do not have any conflict of interest with you and they are working as an outsourced function of that establishment. How to draft your whistleblowing policy? You need to get a list of types of concerns that should be reported, and all of this depends on the nature and size and industry and the countries where your businesses operate. The procedures for raising these concerns and the ways in which the organization will respond to the whistleblower. There should be clear channels of making disclosures, including alternative reporting procedures, and it must provide an assurance to train the employees at all levels on whistleblowing policy and any applicable laws, to treat all the disclosures appropriately, consistently, and fairly, and to take reasonable steps to maintain that confidentiality of the whistleblower whenever it is requested, and that victimization will not be acceptable. So the point being, when you are a whistleblower and you see that there are appropriate laws in your country protecting you, and you see that even at your company level, you have a whistleblowing policy which looks like is quite protective of your plans of whistleblowing, that gives you strength to report. And as a good corporate governance practice, it is very important for us that we go and promote the whistleblowing function so that we are able to show and exhibit a better governed company. Now let us discuss what is the dilemma of a whistleblower: to bell or not to bell the cat. I'm sure you would have read this story. The question remains whether to speak up or to remain silent. What gives you more peace? Will you be able to sleep peacefully at night if you bell the cat? Or will you be able to sleep at night if you decide not to bell the cat? Well, that depends upon your personal circumstances and, of course, the moral values with which you have been raised, and, to be realistic, the protection of whistleblowers in your jurisdiction. Whenever a whistleblower is planning to whistleblow, he or she considers the risks and rewards. Maybe the risks are too high and the rewards are too less. Sometimes the risks overweigh so much that there might not even be any reward at all. There is no manual on how to whistleblow. So there is no perfect practice as to how you should initiate that action, unless you really want to and you feel the need that this action or this function that you are involved in and this kind of misconduct that you found out, if you do not tell this, who else will? And you feel that need inside you to let this out for the well-being and good of the whole society. The whistleblowers should know before they make that fateful call, which will irrevocably change their lives. There is no way to go back after you blow the whistle, and that is what you all need to know. Whenever a whistleblower is deciding, is contemplating whether I should really go ahead, whether I should really stop myself, there is a continuous influx of thoughts. You are just beating yourself up for not doing something or beating yourself up for doing something. And you keep on discussing with yourself whether I should really do that or not. Sometimes the matters are so serious that you cannot even talk to your family or even your partner about it. I was reading this article about when Edward Snowden was planning. He shared that he did not even tell his family, and his wife thought that he was having an affair. So imagine, as a whistleblower, when you are considering yourself, you are elevating yourself from a basic level that everyone else is at to a higher level. You need to consider the risks involved. You think if you report, you would be punished. At the same time, you want to protect your job. You have gone through this intense experience which you cannot talk about because of the confidentiality issues. Even after you whistleblow, years pass and the legal process keeps on dragging, and you never get that feeling that you have done something right because you do not even know the result. There is a big risk of reward which may actually never come. But then you think, you never really did it for the reward. Everyone goes back to their own lives after whistleblowing, except you. You feel that after you whistleblow, you will become isolated. The maximum you would get is a nice thank you handshake from the government or the organization. But did you really do it for the reward? Was there a way in which you could have actually stopped yourself from not doing it? Now let us discuss what happens to you after you have whistleblowed. There is a Korean study conducted which found out that bullying by superiors had a close link to bullying by colleagues. The colleagues' understanding of the whistleblower's reasons for acting had a significant effect on lowering the frequency of bullying by the colleagues. And the female whistleblowers might also suffer more retaliation than male whistleblowers. And the Ethics Resource Center reports that in 2013, 21% of whistleblowers in the US suffered retaliation. There was another study I read which said that amongst all of the frauds found out in companies in US, 41% of them were through whistleblowers. So it's important for you to realize what kind of role you play. It is not simply about keeping your head down and continuing with your job. If you do not feel that you have really done something when you had the power to, if you let that opportunity go, will you be able to live with that for the rest of your life? There is another question which needs to be discussed about rewarding the whistleblowers. In this case, a former risk officer of Deutsche Bank turned down his share of $16.5 million of whistleblower reward to protest a lack of punishment for the bank's top executives, because he said that this reward that I'm getting is basically the shareholders' money, and the purpose or the reason or the people at which he blew the whistle, they actually never got punished. So he felt that this whole reward or the whole of this process was futile. So I think this is one of the examples to show that when it comes to morality and loyalty, you might side with morality when you have examples like these. Before I conclude, I want to express this. If I ask you, what is the national hobby of Hong Kong? What will you say? I'm sure you are probably chuckling in your seats. In my experience, I think most of the Hong Kong people love to complain. And I want to clarify here, whistleblowing is not complaining. You might complain for something that you have not received at a personal level, like as a customer or in any service industry that you go to. You may not have received a service and you complain. That is not whistleblowing. Whistleblowing is a different function where you find out something that is seriously wrong in the process or the functionality of an organization or an abuse of power, and you have a strong evidence to prove that. So for the sake of whistleblowing, please do not file complaints, because there is a process of whistleblowing which in my opinion is very sacred. And these people who are very enthusiastic in their hobby of complaining, they tarnish this image of whistleblowing function. So I request you not to be that person. So to conclude, should we encourage whistleblowing? Definitely. It is a very important corporate governance tool. Should we incentivize revelation of illegal activities? Well, it raises another question of paying for information. But at the same time, it depends on which stage your country is in. For example, in a lot of underdeveloped countries, there is a rampant corruption. And at that time, because you are in the process of growing, it is very important that the government should make such policies to encourage people to raise their voice against corruption. I have a very interesting joke. When I was working as an intern, when I started my career, I was working under a very big personality in the corporate world. And I asked him, what is corruption in your opinion? Because we might have different definitions. And he told me, Pooja, corruption is when people take the money and still do not do their job. Well, I leave it up to you as to think what is your definition of corruption. But in my opinion, depending on the situation your country is at, you should incentivize this function, especially at the government levels. Let's say in many underdeveloped countries, there is extreme corruption. You can even go through the recently released corruption index and see where these countries are at. And in that case, in my opinion, for a short period of time maybe, it would be helpful if these countries start paying for information or start rewarding people who speak against corrupt officers. Suggestions: we have to be cautious about frivolous complaints. We have to separate people who like to complain from people who are whistleblowers. The pros and cons of financial incentives should be evaluated based on the circumstances of each jurisdiction. To end, I got this quote by Alice Walker, who is a social activist and a writer, and she says, "As long as the people do not fear the truth, there is hope." I hope you found this seminar helpful and it helped you to understand the concept of whistleblowing. And whistleblowing is not complaining about a hot coffee which is not too hot. Thank you very much.